Welcome to Safety Last with your host, Stanley Ching.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, brother.
Hey, man. What's up?
Oh, man, not a hell of a lot, man.
um, I I think it's really fitting that the first person on my podcast is actually the person who made the podcast introduction. So, everyone, this is Gio. I'm calling you by that name. I think this is the first time I've ever called you by that name.
Yeah, I'm tripping out,
Like
man. That's the
quite
first
literally.
time you haven't called me what's exactly on my birth certificate.
This is something that I heard before. I've I actually think Christian is a really cool name, and it's actually a name that um I would consider naming like my child. Like I really like that name. However,
Hmm.
uh I really don't like the name to be shortened to Chris. And I think I mentioned this to someone, and then
Yeah.
and someone said like that's what my mum said, but then my mum also told me I named you Christian, not Chris. So everyone should be calling you Christian. And I think I just need to take that approach in the future.
As in, like, stringently enforce
Yes.
the full name policy
Yes.
on your
Get
child.
really upset if it doesn't happen.
Like, your kid comes home one day, they're like 13, they're going through the rebellious teenage phase, and they're like, hey, I want you to call me Chris now. And you're like,
No way.
cool, I want you to sleep outside now,
Um
You're man enough to change your name, you're man enough to move out. Beat it.
so Gio, this...
I'm not used to it.
Do you want
No,
to
it's good, it's good.
introduce
Yeah.
yourself? Do you want to I guess just give yourself a plug, because you're a person who is trying to do a lot of things. I know that you have a podcast coming out, and I'm a big fan of your music as well. So I guess that's the first plug of the night. Is there anything you want to say before we jump
Oh
into
man,
our
yeah, let's
topic?
just get all the plugs on the table, man. I got a band called Pyramid Mission. It's an industrial experimental rap project. Really cool stuff coming out soon. I would definitely put some links if there were some links for you to follow. They don't exist at the moment, but keep your ears peeled for the words Pyramid Mission. Keep your eyes peeled for the words
Hmm.
Pyramid Mission, and click. I insist that you click because I can promise you there will be some dope stuff.
Anyway, so I wanted to bring you on to talk about skydiving, and that's something that we've done together.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have.
what a hell of a memory!
Dude. Yeah, that was like one of the craziest in terms of just like intensity of the experience. One of the most intense experiences of my
By
life,
far,
for sure.
by far. Let's actually, before we talk about what happened in skydiving or during the day for skydiving, um,
Yeah.
let's talk about how we got onto this, because this is something that I'd actually considered for many like years or months. Like I'd been thinking about skydiving for a while beforehand, except it's just so terrifying. Like it's not easy for someone to come to the conclusion that they want to do skydiving without really a big push. And your big push, and I feel like you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in a similar boat. And your big push was after coming out from Vipassana, and that really gave you the inspiration and the motivation to do it. So, firstly, is that correct? And if so, if it is correct, which I'm not sure it is, let me know what your thoughts were for Vipassana and why that. What is it, and why that pushed you towards skydiving?
Oh man, I mean, no, you're definitely correct. I had always like kind of ruminated on the idea of going skydiving. I always thought it'd be a cool thing, but I'd never actually made the plunge to pun fully intended. I never made the plunge to make it like a reality. So I what triggered it for me was being at Vipassana, and then
What is Vipassana? Like, explain that
oh, yeah,
first.
that's a good thing. Yeah, some jargon we're throwing around there. So Vipassana is like a style of meditation, and I was at a Vipassana meditation retreat. So you essentially live like a monk and you meditate for 10 hours a day, and you take a vow of silence and you don't speak to anyone and you don't you eat 2 meals a day and you essentially live entirely like a Buddhist monk for this period of time. And it's up in the Blue Mountains at the Vipassana. The Vipassana meditation center I went to was in the Blue Mountains. It's a great place. While we're giving plugs here, And it definitely will. I can't promise that it will, make you want to jump out of a plane, but in my case, that's kind of the one of the outcomes that I had. And I was basically just, yeah, I finished a meditation session, which is pretty much all you do when you're there, and I was staring off at the horizon. And actually, I thought about I thought about Legend of Zelda, the newest one
Breath of the
at
Wild?
the time of this recording. Hmm?
Was it Breath of the Wild?
Yeah, because like a big thing in that game is you travel by sort of with like a you got some sort of like a paraglider type of thing, and you can sort of free fall before you open your paraglider. And I've been playing a bit of that game before I'd gone off, and I think the image of traversing through the skies was very romantic, and it came back to me. But then I think at that point I was like, well, just doing it in a game is one thing. I want to actually be in the air. I want to experience this great thrill of falling through the sky, and this sort of that exhilaration of the fall, but then also that moment of bliss when the parachute opens and you just slowly gaze upon, sort of, I don't know, the world from a bird's eye view, and you just sort of float gracefully above.
You've never done bungee jumping, right?
No, never done it.
Okay, bungee jumping is sort of the opposite of that. So the
Yeah.
serene feeling. So just to mention again, just in case anyone missed it, Gio and I.
I was
There it
waiting for that.
goes. I knew it was gonna come out. But Gio and I, we both went skydiving at together, same place, same time. Did you jump out first, or did I jump out first? I think you did.
I think it was me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically within 10 seconds of each other. And about bungee jumping, I'm bringing this up as a point of contrast. Bungee jumping is not serene at all because you have an elastic
Mm.
rope to your leg, and you're constantly going up and down, and it's like the opposite of serene. Um, at no point does it do until the elasticity of the band like stops. Like you're constantly going up and down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but just to bring it back to Vipassana, this is something that you told me, and maybe you could elaborate on this. You said that afterwards, after for 10 days, like not speaking to anyone, not really engaging in much activity or much movement, you felt your body like tingle, almost like you were. That sounds quite strange, but as in you were really in tune with your physical body, and you could feel the sensations heightened, and because of that, you wanted to do something even more extreme, which was skydiving, right? Like, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. And I was at all kinds of crazy tingles all the time. And in my experience, everyone is always tingling, but it's just not being. It's something that you're not always aware of. Which I guess is kind of funny when I think about that, because like skydiving is inherently such a system shock that it doesn't matter how mindful or how present minded you are or you aren't. You're pretty much, it's impossible to not be 100% immersed in skydiving. Like, there's no way you can, think about anything else other than the fact that you're falling when you're
Did the
doing it.
as you were on the plane going up, did another thought enter your brain, like anything else? Because for me, I literally was 100% of my mind was dedicated to skydiving, and the fact that I would be paying money to jump out of a plane.
Yeah, I remember that one, feeling like an idiot. It's like I'm I'm paying people to like make me feel terrified. And it's funny, like you have these crazy paranoid thoughts. That duality between, because like I said, you're totally present when you're doing it. And I'm sure, your experience was similar, right? Like you didn't, there's nothing else you could have possibly been thinking about when you're in it.
Absolutely,
But then,
nothing at
yeah,
all.
yeah. But then on the actual lead up to it, you're totally present in the idea of the thing, but it's not actually the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like whether that be fear or excitement or nerves or whatever you want to call it. I was totally just fixated on that. Like I recall distinctly as the plane was actually going
Oh my
up.
god, that was
I had this
terrifying.
moment. Yeah, like that was it. Like I thought I was in some sort of Vietnam War movie, man. We're gonna jump out of this plane, and I'm like, oh Christ.
Yeah,
Um,
we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but in
yes,
terms of
yes.
in
Now
terms
we'll
of the
get to that
story,
later.
but you are correct. As soon as the plane rose, my my first my first reaction was there is no way I can get off this apart from like
Mm.
punching the pilot, and there's no way I can get off this. The only way I can get off is if I jump. And the second thought was, I am an idiot. Why am I paying money to like risk my life? But let's go back to
Yeah.
let's go back to the beginning. So we arrived at the place. Was it Wollongong?
Wollongong.
Okay, we
Yeah.
arrived at Wollongong. Beautiful day. Um, and it really did not hit me that I would be jumping out of the sky. Until I had to wear the, what do you call it? The uniform, the safety gear
Like
around me.
the safety harness
Yeah,
and the stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then like when I tell this story to people, they're like 3 times that, like, it really scared me. So that was the first one.
Yep.
The second time it scared me was, as I just mentioned, which is when the plane takes off and you realize like there's no way to go down. You know, like literally there's no way to go down apart from, like, I guess, jumping. And thirdly, and I'd like to hear your opinion of, anything that happened in between, because I remember us having a really good conversation on the bus to there. But
Mm.
the third thing that like terrified me, and this is the thing I often tell to people, because when I say this experience to people, their reaction is just like fear. They just look at me and they're just like terrified. And I tell them, when we're in the when you're on the plane, after like
Yep.
10 minutes and you somewhat get used to like the surroundings because nothing's really happening, then all of a sudden this like a light flashes, and then immediately someone holds like this slide up door and slides it up. It's made out of plastic, which I don't know how I missed that, but when I saw this guy slide up like a plastic, like like it's like a tiny door, my reaction was like, how is that safe? And how did I not? Did you
Yeah.
notice that? I didn't actually notice the
Yeah, yeah,
plus.
like it looks like a garage
Yeah,
roller door or
I didn't
something like
notice
that,
that at
but
all.
plastic as well. Like halfway between a garage roller door and a shower
Hmm.
curtain. Like it's pretty yeah.
Did you notice
It's
that?
pretty freaky, man. No.
I didn't.
I don't think I was like fixated on that. Yeah, but now that you mention it, I remember it being like that,
And
yeah.
as soon as he pulled it up and the wind started like roaring in, and there was no longer like a physical divide between me and the sky, I remember just like, from memory, my memory might be a little sketchy, but there was a person in front of me, and I think I immediately with both hands grabbed that, like the instructor in front of me grabbed his backpack or grabbed his like his shirt or his collar just out of fear. I was terrified. And
Mm,
when I recount that moment, like them lifting the slide door and then hearing the wind come in, everyone's reaction is immediately like this, like just like groan combined with like they just like shrink back.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that was definitely the point where things got real. I think I had two kind of major points of fear. The second ones you described, like I think when the harness was still going on, I was still like excited. Just purely just like, yeah, I'm gonna jump out of a plane. Woo, it's gonna be sick. And it wasn't until I got in the plane, like I remember I had my first like really irrational fear. That's how I knew I'd gotten into it. And it was literally just like, what's it called? I remember distinctly like there was another plane next to us, and
Hmm.
that plane was doing like dive
Hmm.
bombs and stuff.
Hmm.
And then I was convinced that our plane was gonna dive bomb. Like, no, the pilot's gonna screw with us. Like, he's gonna start doing dive bomb. Like, that would literally kill everyone on board. There's no way they'd do that. And then, I didn't really realize that till like, I don't
Did
know,
we
a
have
good 20
seatbelts
seconds
on,
after. No, we didn't.
bro? How do we not have any seatbelts on?
Yeah, it's just the way it's set up. I think I'm convinced that we got no seatbelts. This guy's gonna do a dive bomb.
That's
He's gonna
crazy.
execute us all right now, man. I was like, that's it, bro. This is how my life ends. So I was like, yeah. But then I realized that that's not gonna happen. This is a stupid thought, and I'm just, I'm terrified. But okay. But yeah, once the roller door opened, oh, I think before, like I said, like, speaking of Vietnam movie, like that felt like absolute just deployment. I'm like, oh man, things are getting real now. Like, here we go.
You know what was also interesting? And I'm piggybacking off a point that you brought up before, which is,
Mm,
even before we were jumping, even before we were, close to jumping, like 10, 20 minutes before we did the act, our minds were so preoccupied with the idea of jumping. So we were still thinking about
Mm,
jumping, but
mm.
it was a preconception. It was uh, is the word illusion? Like we were just thinking up, conjuring up the idea of what jumping meant. Um, but what was really cool when I actually did the act, and I know I'm skipping a few steps, but when I actually did the act, and I was on the ground just like winded and just in disbelief. My instructor came to me, he gave me a high five, gave me a hug, and he said, "You see, like it was all in your mind." Like he said that,
Oh, dude, that's sick.
and he like clapped me on the shoulder and he walked off. And I realized it was actually on my mind because when I did the jump, it was so like I, I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's no fear in the jump itself, right?
I don't think so. But okay. So let's get to the jump part. So
Yeah.
the red light flashes in the plane, and then the person lifts up the plastic door. And what shocked me was how quickly people jumped out of the plane.
Yeah, I had that too. I remember like distinctly expecting, all right, one person goes and
Hmm.
there's like a minute and
Hmm.
you wait. But like that's where the deployment idea comes from. Like I felt like we're just the squad and we're like, all right, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. We are all jumping out of this plane in the next bloody minute or two.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh shit,
Like
it's happening.
for the people listening, I just want to emphasize a plane full of well, there were around 20 people, including instructors. There was like 10 people plus
I think
instructors,
so. I think so. Yeah, it
approximately
sounds
around
about
20
right.
people. I would say in the span of like 40 seconds, like everyone emptied out of the plane. Like, is that
Yep.
is that correct? Because I felt like I jumped like a second after you. Like,
Yeah, I'm pretty
honestly.
sure it was like that. Like I felt the second the roll door opened, like this moment of terror you're describing was wild terrifying. Like the moment of terror of the roll door being opened was very terrifying, but very brief.
Hmm.
Like I remember
Very
like, oh
brief.
man, it's happening, it's real. And then but then, within 15 or 20 seconds after that, I'm bloody falling, thousands of kilometers an
Hmm.
hour through the sky. So
And
there's that.
and the other thing is because we're strapped to someone behind us,
Mm.
my instructor was a male. It just basically moved me forward. He just started walking forward, and my body's like, "Oh, okay, I guess we're doing this." and
Yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
originally thought, as you said, we would sit on the edge of the plane, and like I would contemplate, and then I would be the one making the decision because that's what sort of happens at bungee jumping.
Mm.
No, no, and I'm almost, I'm always glad they didn't do it because if I sat at the edge of the plane, I probably would have just like not moved for like 5 minutes.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, if I were to have a crack at it, it's totally it's funny, like it's completely surreal because it's so alien to like everything else I've experienced, because I'm not frequently doing it. Like when you're doing skydiving as a non skydiver or someone who doesn't have much to do with aviation or anything, to do with in the air in general, you're gonna naturally find it surreal. But the physical feeling, the adrenaline, and the excitement of it is so palpably real. Like there's something deeply humanly primal about free falling. And it's interesting. I wouldn't describe it as scary. Like I think in that moment, I just had full faith that look, this guy strapped my back. He's a pro. He's a G. He knows what he's doing. All right, he's gonna make sure that we don't die. So I'm just gonna enjoy the fact that I'm flying through the air, 100 kilometers an hour, just having a blast, man.
So you wouldn't call it fear because I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's definitely not like the fear. It's like the instructor said to you, like it was all in your head.
Hmm.
And I would say the same about my own experience. Like the second I jumped out of the plane, I didn't experience any fear.
Mm. Actually,
Like I experienced just pure, just like thrill and exhilaration,
yeah,
but it wasn't scary at all.
and what also shocked you was how quickly, like, I can't, I don't even know how to explain it, but when I jumped out of the plane, how almost the distance I covered in like those 3 seconds before he pulled the harness, like I felt like I covered like miles just free falling at that height. And the
Mm,
houses went from like a tiny dot to like noticeably bigger in that free fall period. And then once he pulled the harness, I think for a few seconds my brain was still in shock. And then the only time I would say I felt fear was, and I'm not sure if your instructor allowed you to do this, but um, he allowed me to like steer the harness, like sorry, steer the parachute. Did your instructor let you do that?
Oh yeah, he did.
Okay, that scared me
Yeah, that was
because
really
it.
okay.
So here's the thing: when you're just falling straight down, you don't really feel like you don't really feel movement because you're just going straight down, right? But once you start
Yep.
steering, like to me, I felt momentum take my body left and right, and it's like a roller coaster, right? If you're just going like 100 kilometers an hour straight and there's no bumps, it's not really scary. It's the turning that makes it scary. And when that happened,
Mm.
that actually scared me.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I was in a very like childlike state of mind. I think it was that playfulness of like, okay, speaking of, the Legend of Zelda inspiration, like in my mind, I was like, oh, cool. I'm just, flying around. I'm playing this cool sky toy. I'm, going wherever I want to go. But I can see that I can see where there is room for fear because like you have a level of like agency and control, which in a sense makes it real.
Hmm.
And I think
Agreed.
in a sense when you're free falling, you have no choice but to accept the free fall,
Yeah.
and you're entirely under the sort of supervision of a instructor who's a professional that you've sort of placed your trust in.
Mm.
But at this point, I mean, I guess it is a limited form of control. Like if you are somehow in some horrible, weird way steering it wrong, the instructor's going to take over,
Hmm.
but in a moment of like self-doubt, because at the end of the day, like it's not like we have any prior experience with controlling a parachute or a you know there's actually room for that doubt
Hmm.
to set in and create the fear.
Actually, talking about that, talking about the self doubt and agency, the thing that scared me the most, and I actually thought
Mm.
this even when I was like, I don't know, 5,000 meters in the air, however high I was. What happens if I let go to one of the how do we describe this for the audience? Like, so when the parachute goes up, there's two things you can hold on to, and if you pull right, like I think you turn left, or you pull, if you pull like this, it's almost like a train horn, like when it toots, like if you pull
Like the
that,
like the handles, like the
yeah,
steering
yeah,
handles, or whatever.
like if
Yeah.
you, so my fear was what happens if because my hands get slippery or something, like I let go. Does that mean we can know like? Does that just fly away and then like I can only steer with one like that that scared me.
Mm. Oh yeah. I see that's interesting because my mind didn't go there at all. But if it did go there, that's like a very like logical thing to be scared of. But like I think about like that's kind of the whole nature of how the fear exists in this context. Like if your mind goes there, there's potential for fear.
Mm,
But then at the
absolutely.
same time, I actually don't know enough about the mechanics of the parachute to know if this situation you're describing is even possible. But like it's reminding me of like my fear that I had about about the pilot doing a dive bomb, which when I look back on it is just so funny and absurd to me. Like this guy who's like riding a plane is just like, oh, I'm gonna mess with you guys now, and he just does a dive bomb. I don't know what that is. Like it tacks into like the childhood part of me, like a teenage me who's worried that like the boys are gonna like do stacks on you or something at like
Yeah.
recess. Like
Yeah.
like oh 10 guys are gonna come
Yeah.
and dogpile me for no
Yeah.
reason. It's like oh this pilot is gonna like crash this plane for a
Yeah.
joke.
Granted, like I agree with that.
Like it's absurd. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree with that. On the other hand, I think my fear, the fear of like letting slip the handle,
Yeah.
whilst it isn't practical, I'm not sure if that's the right word. I think it is somewhat
Mm.
logical because like if my hand did slip, like how do we retrieve it? Because the wind would be blowing it everywhere. There's no way I could grab it again. Like I'm glad I didn't let it slip, but I feel like that was somewhat a logical fear, even if it shouldn't have popped up, or rather like,
Okay, and that does make sense, but then I would imagine that if that were potentially possible, there's probably some other way the instructor could theoretically grab
mm,
the handle.
yep.
Like I doubt they would give inexperienced people who are like racked with nerves the ability to potentially end both of your lives. You know what I mean?
So you're right, but that
But
thought
like
doesn't
obviously if
enter
you're in
my
the
head at
moment, you're not gonna have
5,000 meters in the air.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. That's what I mean. Like that's what's interesting about the
Mm,
mechanics of what skydiving kind of shows you about fear.
mm,
Like because you're gonna get scared one way or another unless you
yep.
have I don't know like a busted amygdala or for whatever reason you just don't feel fear. You're gonna get freaked out in some way, and it's probably not well not probably not. It's by definition not rational. I mean, look, skydiving accidents do happen, and there was one quite recently in Australia. I can't remember which place exactly, but like, regardless of that, like, assuming it's not one of those, horrible, like, I don't know, failures of the parachute or whatever, like, chances are it's gonna be fine, and you're going to. There's nothing that can really go wrong. You're gonna jump out of the plane, you have a cool experience, and you're gonna land in the ground, and that's it. That's part of your life now.
You know, um, talking about like it's
But
not
the fear happens like imaginary in the imagination. Like the imagination is sort of like the foundation from which fear is built.
absolutely, and I think talking about it's not rational. I'm pretty sure this is a well-known statistic, but driving the car is more dangerous, right?
Mm,
That's a correct statistic.
pretty sure it is. Yeah, yeah. Like you're more likely to
Or at the
die
very
in a
least,
car accident than
yeah,
skydiving.
let's just say driving for 3 months is more dangerous than
Yeah.
skydiving at the very least. And yet when I turn on my car, there is no fear. And I think another thing that skydiving, firstly, it's just so absurd to jump from a plane from that altitude, but
Mm,
the lack of agency. I think with cars, you always feel like, and it might be conceited, but if someone comes at me at a ridiculous speed, I'm good enough, or I'm smart enough, or I'm tactical enough to dodge them. But when you're jumping from a plane, like everything is really out of your hands, and that's actually something like I want to transition with that thought onto why we should why I would recommend skydiving. And I think part of it
mm,
is the fact that you let go of that agency and you almost throw, I don't want to say caution because it's not, you throw your fear to the wind.
mm, mm,
And something I said at the end when I came down, and maybe you can elaborate. Like, I'm not sure if you believe this, but just on this idea of why you should do skydiving. But when I came down, I thought like I would really like to have a partner that was interested in this sort of stuff. Some because for me it just shows like a level of adventurous spirit and risk taking that I think is important in people. So anyway, what do you think about like should people skydive? Like why should people skydive?
mm.
And just your opinion.
Yeah, man, dude. I mean, I would recommend it to anybody. And assuming that you're physically healthy enough and capable of doing it, like I think it's a great, and and you have the money for it. It's a worthwhile, investment because it's a great life experience. Um, in that realm of sort of facing your fears, it's a great way to sort of see the mechanics of how fear operates. In that, it does exist entirely in your imagination. Fear only exists in anticipation, and then once you get into the present moment, the fear itself is no longer a thing. It's gone. Um, it's pure excitement. And I don't know if that's always the case. Now that's where it gets interesting because like I have memories of like being a kid and I've done certain like thrill rides at theme parks that like really freak me out. Or even as I'm remembering now, it's almost like a repressed memory. Like I'm doing this like what's it called? This what do you call them? Those water slides at Bali. And it was like I remember really I was scared on the slide. So maybe I can't promise any prospective skydivers that they won't be scared while doing it. But I think if you have a cool mindset about it, and keep in mind that was the water slide thing as me as a you know wigged out 7-year-old kid. If you're here and you're an adult, or at least I don't know, definitely have to be an adult, whatever. If you're old enough to skydive, and you have the means to do so, I think it's a great way to, like you said, tackle your fears and have. And I think most importantly, just like witness the nature of how fear works, and just kind of see that a lot of it's a big load of crap. Like fear is literally just your imagination making bad situations for you. In that sense, it's not even fear because fear suggests it's in response to something real. It's anxiety. Like fear is like there's a bear in front of you, and you have a reason to be afraid of that bear. Um, maybe I'm splitting words with hairs here, but
No,
whatever you want to use to describe it, I don't think that the fear itself is a thing that's actually worth um, being overcome by.
I agree with that. And talking about your bear example, the bear maybe by your if we're continuing your definition, the bear is scary, or we can be fearful of the bear because I guess we
Mm.
can die. But the thing with skydiving is, beforehand, like logically, that like you have a professional, you have a harness and everything, and that should, you know, negate the fear. But the fact that it doesn't, as maybe this is your point, like it transforms away from fear into anxiety, because even though that logically the fear should be gone, it's still there. Is that what you're talking about?
Um, no, but you know what? Actually, I like that point because that's really cool. Because like it makes me realize that the point isn't to like, oh, you do this experience and then you realize fear doesn't make sense, therefore you never feel fear or anxiety or whatever again. But it's more so you realize, oh, it doesn't make sense, so you do things in spite of the fear or anxiety.
Mm,
And I think that's the cool thing about skydiving. Like I know for a fact that if you and I would, go again, we're gonna be fearful. We're still gonna have that adrenaline, that hype. Maybe not as much as the first time, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no way it's not going to be there like that. And if anything, that feeling of anticipation of something big is always going to happen. But I guess that's where I want to get kind of philosophical about it because, like, I think the anticipation's normal, the nerves are normal, but then, like, how do you respond to those nerves?
absolutely,
Do
absolutely.
you like relish in the excitement? Do you relish in the nerves? Do you appreciate them for what they are? And you know, let that just be a natural build up to this great, climax of free falling out of a plane,
Mm.
or is it this thing that's like, no, this is bad. This is a negative thing. Like I think that anticipation and that anxiety is normal, and I would wager that well, actually, no, not even a guess. Like, I'm pretty sure I spoke to like a lot of. I spoke to my instructor, and he said, look, you never get used to it. Like, you're always going to be hyped. You're always anticipating it. Like, it's inherently a thrilling thing. And this is a guy that has done like over 3,000, jumps. Um, Obviously, he doesn't get freaked out in the same way that a newbie would, but there's this natural response of being in a state of anticipation. And hell, you don't jump out of a plane 3,000 times unless you love that feeling. Like, I could see myself doing it again, maybe, but, you know, imagine doing that. Imagine that's your life. Your life is literally jumping out of planes for a living. That's what you do for money. Like, that's a day in the office for these
You,
people.
you know
Like,
you know what you know
they
what's like
literally
a
jump out of a plane
what's an
every
interesting
day.
idea?
Yeah.
His idea of fear would be like a job interview or something like that. Whilst like
Mm,
us, I think like I think we'd be more acclimatized to that. Like for us, teaching in front of like 30 people, like that's not scary, or to me, and I know to you anyway. But for him or her, like that could be terrifying. On the other hand, because they've like jumped out of a plane so many times,
yeah.
what we consider like strange is more normal, not so normal, but definitely more normal. And I want to just mention or continue on something that you said before. To me, like this is such, like I meant it before when I said, like, imagine if you told like your great 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 grandma that you jumped out of a plane. Like imagine like, hey grandma,
Mm.
I basically performed Icarus for one day, or like for a few
Yeah.
minutes. Like
Yeah.
that is just so cool. And I think, and this is something I think about a lot. Like if I were to die, and I know that's quite a morbid thought, but if that was to happen, would I be happy or unhappy that I did this or I didn't do this? And for me, the fact that I could fly, and like fly from a plane and see the world from like a bird's eye view, and the only thing stopping me was fear, like to me that's unacceptable. And I think that's another reason I pushed through, even though when you first mentioned it, I'm not sure if you remember,
Mm.
my reaction was, yeah, it sounds cool, but do you want to push it back? Like I wanted to do it.
I do recall I had to kind of like bully you into like, come on, bro, let's do it. Don't be a don't be a punk, Like,
I like Here's the thing, like I
I had
knew
to
I
peer pressure you hard.
I knew I wanted to do it. Like I knew that I wanted to do it. At the same time, the idea of jumping out of a plane is so like anti-human, anti-life. Like it's so
Mm.
against our biology. But I think it's but because it is so against the norm, I think that's more of a reason why you should do it. Because
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
because like waking up and going to the office, or waking up and going to the park, like that's okay, but that's normal. But like jumping out of a plane, like that is that's just so like out there, and I think it really it really gives people some emotions that um like you just
Mm.
like how else could you replicate that feeling, that adrenaline, that like anticipation, that fear, that everything, all that combined. Like I really think that there are not many things that can trigger that emotion. And I think because of that, if someone wants to live their life and experience the full range of emotions, I think bungee jumping is a way to actually experience that.
Oh, dude, totally, man. I think yeah, that's kind of why adrenaline junkies exist as a concept. People who just are attracted to the extremes. And I think even if that's not necessarily you, I think everyone owes themselves to do skydiving, and if not, something that triggers a similar experience, something that lets you see what it's like to be in a high state of adrenaline and a high state of anticipation, and have a chance to confront naturally forming anxieties that feel very normal as you feel them, and then also dissolve into meaninglessness once you've actually confronted them. Because I think that's just a universal, sort of principle about how to live well, is to be able to have this sort of tempered approach to one's anxieties, or know how to receive them. Yeah, know how to receive anxiety. And I think that's just an inherent part of skydiving. It has to be done. You have to do that in order to skydive. And yeah, for that reason, I would totally recommend it.
100%. I think the idea of just just to push yourself out there with something so absurd, so out there, so thrilling to me is it's something that people should chase, because it's, to me, it's really about disciplining the mind and being able to push yourself into fields that you're not comfortable with. And I know this might be like, people might not see a link between this, but to me, like having the courage or having the ability to stand up to your fears and to logically to push through, not even logically, to emotionally, to whatever however one does it, to push through, to me, like
Mm,
that's similar to like turning up for the first day of work even though you're scared, or that's like, going to reconnect with a friend that you grew distant from and you're fearful of their judgment. Like, to me, this idea of going after what you want despite potential fear and anxiety, like
mm,
that's a similar link between everything. And to me, skydiving is just the most
both.
extreme version of that. And but I think more people can take some of this self-resolve, this self-discipline, and apply it. And um last thing I'll say, and then I'll leave you with the last word. But I knew this person who went through, who got, I guess, got cancer and then healed from it, recovered from it. And then one of the first things that they did was jump out of a plane. And they told me that when
Far out.
they said this to people, like they just recovered from cancer, they've fully recovered, and then 1 or 2 years later they said they wanted to jump out of a plane. Their family reacted like, wait, why do you want to do that? You just escaped death. But their reaction was like, I'm doing this to feel alive, I'm doing this for myself. And I think that, to me, I thought that was beautiful. Like, do this for yourself, because if you want to know what you can do, if you actually push through and chase things which seem like an illusion or seem far away or seem fearful at first, I think skydiving is the perfect analogy for that.
Oh man, no, I'm not taking the last word. That's beautiful. I want to leave it on that, man. That's dope.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, thank you, Gio, and thank you for sharing this experience. I guess we have to look for a new thing to do, because we've done skydiving, we've been to Korea again. No, not again. We've been to Korea before. I think I threw out Venice, for the book, the potential new storyline. That might be something we look into, because, um, yeah,
It would be very romantic, you and I on a blue, on a,
gondola.
on the seas, on a gondola. Yeah, yeah, it's a real
You know what we should
bromance
do?
kind of
We
activity.
should hire some person to walk around and play like a lute. the whole day, just behind us.
Now we're talking. While we're at it, we'll find someone else just to throw roses beneath our feet
Lovely.
wherever
I'm
we
in.
walk.
I'm in.
That's some pretty boy stuff, man. I like it.
All right, man. Thank you for this, and I hope you enjoyed listening to the first episode. Safety last. Catch you later.
Thank you for tuning in to Safety Last with Stanley Ching. If you enjoyed this, then please leave a rating or a comment. I hope you're leaving with a new idea, and make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and other places that can be found in the description.